Hello, and welcome to this installment of the Friedman series, Outlook from the Inside. I'm your host, Michael Cohen, an audit partner in the SEC practice group and the partner in charge of our quality review department. And I'm pleased to be joined today by my friend, Will Mendez, the managing director of Sizing. Thanks for joining me today, Will.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
I know you well, and we've worked together for a few years now, but how about you provide a brief description of Sizing, your background, and how you got into cybersecurity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Sizen is a wholly owned company, a cybersecurity arm of Friedman, and we help clients protect themselves against the emerging cyber threat. So we help companies protect themselves against cyber attacks, and we do that through various means, whether it's testing, assessments, or actually monitoring a company's environment to see if we detect any type of activity or malicious activity within their environment. As far as me getting into cybersecurity, I started out with the Department of Defense. I was a computer scientist with the U.S. Army, and in that capacity, I tested security tools that the Army was going to use within their tactical network. So that was a lot of fun. I basically got paid to break stuff. So it definitely was a lot of fun.
Oh, interesting. So to get onto the topic, right? As an audit engagement partner, I interact a great deal with C-level management and audit committees, and I'm surprised by how many of them don't have cybersecurity or cyber threats higher on their list of concerns. The SEC has been highlighting cyber threats for over 10 years now, and we're regularly reminded of successful hacking attempts at some of the world's largest companies. Why do you think cybersecurity doesn't garner greater attention?
Well, unfortunately, cybersecurity is always seen as an add-on. It's an overhead, and most organizations do not see the return on investment, because when you're talking about security, you're talking about putting restrictions, about putting obstacles. I have to sign into, use my username and password. Now I have to look at my phone and I have to enter in a separate code just to access what I need to do to be able to do my duties. And a lot of companies see that as a hindrance. And unfortunately, the only time they actually see that return on investment is one of two ways. One, they get hacked, or two, they get slapped with a fine because they failed to meet some type of regulation.
So, I mean, we talked about obviously the SEC, but what other mandates are there on public or private companies to secure their systems? Is this just a reputational risk that companies have if their systems are compromised? Or is there some kind of other regulatory mandate requiring them to better secure their systems?
Yeah, when you look at the SEC and just regulatory agencies in general that deal with private industry, the requirements are not really that specific. And when you talk about the SEC, there really aren't any specific requirements associated with cybersecurity. There's guidance, there's interpretive guidance, but there's no specific requirement for instituting certain cybersecurity controls, for example. But what you do have is the existing controls. So you have to derive cybersecurity requirements from what the SEC provides right now. So when you look at the SEC, they typically, their main mission is to kind of protect the investor, and this is right out of their website: protect the investor, protect the markets, protect how capital is raised. But when you take those requirements, especially when you're talking about a public company specifically, in terms of investing and how they report their information, most of those requirements boil down to disclosure for public organizations. So you have to disclose information about your company that would allow an investor to make an informed decision as to whether they want to invest in your company. And a lot of those boil down to risk. And because cyber is such integrated in today's world because of our dependency on technology, you have to consider cyber risk as something you need to disclose when you're dealing with public companies.
So are the regulations different depending on who a company does business with? In other words, to the extent that we need to protect individual client information, is it different whether it's a company has my personal information versus another company, or is this just, in Europe, there's obviously the GDPR, which is more protective of personal information. But here, what we're looking at, doesn't matter what kind of information a company has. Is it different between corporate information versus personal information?
Yeah, I mean, information depends on the value a company assigns to it. Obviously, when you're dealing with public information or PII or PHI, which is health information here in the US, there is legislation. There are rules in the books that those have to be protected. In fact, all 50 states in the US, you mentioned GDPR, which is in Europe and the European Union, all of them require some type of protection of your sensitive information, of personal information. But companies should also protect their other sensitive information, whether it's proprietary, whether it's just information that really should not be made public knowledge. That should still be afforded the same type of protection as you would for PII or personally identifiable information. And it kind of depends on the business. And in fact, I would say that when you're dealing from a business to business, B2B, a lot of times the requirements are probably a little bit stricter. Typically the consumer is only concerned about their personal information, but when it comes to another business, there's that third party risk that's associated with it. So if one company is doing business with the other, what happens to one company, whether it's a breach of information, whether a breach of access, it affects the other company as well. So the security requirements are most likely going to be more stringent when you're dealing with companies to company, because the other company is going to want to know what you're doing to protect their information that they give you access to.
So how, you already named a lot of regulations out there. How can a company make sure that they satisfy all of these regulatory mandates?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to risk. You really have to, if you already have a risk management program where you're addressing the regular types of risk, whether it's financial risk, environmental risk, whatever the case may be, you really need to include cyber risk into that, because once you start including cyber risk, you're going to identify what the risks are, what the mitigations should be. And there's a lot of frameworks out there that let you do that. In the United States, you've got NIST, which provides a cybersecurity framework. In Europe or internationally, you have the ISO standards. So all of these help you create a risk program, which allows you to create a cybersecurity program, which can allow you then to meet all of these regulatory requirements. Because when it all boils down to it, a lot of these requirements, especially in the US, they're kind of based on certain frameworks. So if you're aligning with these frameworks, so let's say, for example, in the US, a lot of the regulations are all based on NIST controls and NIST cybersecurity recommendations. So if you align yourself with NIST, you're probably going to be 90% of the way there. And then it's just a matter of digging into the specific regulation, and then you adjust your program. So the way I would approach this is you concentrate on creating a robust program based on an established framework. And then from there, meeting some of these other regulations is just a matter of adjusting a little bit here and a little bit there. So establishing that main program will get you 90% of the way.
Okay, sounds good. And for those of you that haven't seen it yet, I know Will drafted an article that has been posted that talks a little bit about NIST and some of this stuff, which is interesting. I highly recommend that as a read. Will, ordinarily we don't name clients, but I know we've promoted the work we've done to assist Arizona Iced Tea. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you did there and how that might translate to some of the folks watching?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the theme with Arizona Iced Tea is really visibility. And when I say visibility, it's not so much seeing, it's more of awareness. So we partner with their security team to monitor their environment, to make them aware of what the threats are, to make them aware of what's happening within their environment, and then alert them and help respond accordingly to protect them against any type of cyber threat that they're being exposed to. It's been a great experience. It's a partnership. So, we have status calls. So a lot of times, technology is not perfect. So sometimes, they might do certain things and we might miss it from a monitoring perspective. So we all get together and figure out, okay, why was this missed? What can we do to prevent this in the future? And that's kind of the goal here. You always want to have a partnership with other organizations to be able to protect yourself.
Okay. So I start out the conversation by kind of asking of the question of, or saying, I know of a lot of companies that are sort of ignoring the cyber threat subject. And in truth, from what we've been talking about, it's been pretty intimidating for a lot of us newer accountants, right? We already talked about a lot of the regulations, and quite honestly, a lot of the response tends to be a little bit more technical in nature, where accountants or operators aren't really that familiar with some of the technical jargon that you're using. So I guess the question is, is there a good way to get started? Like what, if a prospect comes in the door and says, look, I don't know, just help me figure this out. What can we do? What do you do to help somebody that just says, I've been ignoring these cyber threats. I really need help getting my head around this. Can you please help me?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things to understand when it comes to security, sometimes it's counterintuitive that you really don't start with security. You actually start with your business. What it is that I do. Security, as mentioned before, is seen as a hindrance. So whenever you want to implement security, you want to make sure that it's implemented in a way that it aligns with your business goals. So one quick way, and there's a more robust way of doing it, but if you really want to get a quick picture, just look at your business and look at your technological footprint. What it is that I use, technology for. What are my critical functions? What do I need to communicate with clients? Am I holding information? And then look at that information, what type of information and what technology is used to either access that information or to perform a critical function. And when you look at it, anytime there's technology and information involved, there's going to be a cyber nexus or cyber threat involved, because that's what cyber is, right? Dealing with technology, dealing with information, and how do you protect it?
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Will. I appreciate it. Hopefully everybody watching is taking some from this. And thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. And have a great day.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Have a great day.